At our family dinner, my husband Logan told everyone he was divorcing me for my sister Ava. They'd been sneaking around for years. I simply nodded and said, "Do me a favor, check your email right now." The looks on their faces when they realized what was happening. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here with me today. It's taken me a while to get to a point where I could even talk about this. For so long, the words were stuck in my throat, a heavy knot of betrayal and pain. But I know some of you might be fighting your own hidden battles, and maybe, just maybe, my story can give you a little strength. Before I start, I'd love to know which city you're watching from. Drop it in the comments. My name is Riley Carter. I'm a specialist in digital forensic analysis, which is a fancy way of saying my job is finding the truth buried on computers and phones. I reconstruct digital lives. I follow the electronic trails. I'm good at it because I'm methodical, patient, and I see patterns others miss. I never in a million years thought my most important case would be my own marriage. It all blew up one crisp Sunday afternoon in October during my father's 65th birthday dinner. The house was filled with that comforting, familiar family chaos. The delicious smell of my mother's glazed ham and candied yams permeated the air, mixing with the aroma of the carrot cake I'd baked, resting on the counter. Laughter escaped from the den where my cousins were watching football, and the murmur of conversations was a symphony I'd known my whole life. It was a perfect picture of family, of normalcy, a perfect lie. I remember watching my husband Logan from across the crowded dining table. He was a pediatric anesthesiologist, a good man, a compassionate man, or so I had believed for 7 years. He was charming everyone as usual, telling a story about a tricky surgery that had the whole table captivated. Then he picked up his spoon and tapped it gently against his wine glass. A clear, resonant sound that cut through the noise. "I need to make an announcement," he said. The chatter instantly died. All eyes turned toward him. I studied his face, my professional habits activating even at a moment like this. I noted the slight tremble in his hand as he put the spoon down. I saw his eyes flick for a fraction of a second toward my younger sister Ava, before fixing on a spot above everyone's heads on the far wall. My heart didn't race. It beat with a slow, steady, heavy rhythm in my chest, the drumbeat of a certainty I had been carrying alone for 6 agonizing months. Logan took a deep breath. His voice became firmer, like a rehearsed speech. "Riley and I are getting a divorce." A collective gasp went around the table. My mother's hand flew to her chest. Aunt Valerie whispered, "Oh, honey." My father's thick eyebrows knitted together. His expression was a mask of confusion. "I didn't plan to announce it this way," Logan continued, playing the part of the grieving, reluctant husband. "But since we're all together," he left the sentence hanging, allowing the shock to settle. Then he delivered the final devastating blow. "There's more," he added. He reached across the table, past the bread basket and the gravy boat, and took the hand of Ava, my sister, my restless and beautiful younger sister. "Ava and I have fallen in love." The silence that followed was absolute, so complete you could hear the refrigerator humming from the kitchen. It was only broken by my mother's horrified whisper, "Oh my God." And then every single eye in that room turned to me. They were waiting. They were waiting for the explosion, the tears, the screaming, the accusations, maybe the dramatic hurling of my mother's good china against the wall. They expected me to play my part in their carefully constructed narrative, the shocked, hysterical, heartbroken wife. But I didn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, I held their gazes one by one. I nodded calmly, took a sip of water, and uttered the 9 words that would make their entire world crumble around them. "Please, everyone, check your email right now." Logan's confident smile wavered. Confusion flickered across his face. "Email?" he asked, his voice suddenly unsure. "What emails?" "I sent them just before dinner," I replied in a level voice, pulling out my own phone. "You should all have them by now." And just like that, the story they thought they were telling was no longer theirs. It was mine. It's funny how the human mind works. In that silent, stunned room, as my family hesitantly reached for their phones, my mind wasn't there. It traveled 8 years back to a charity gala for the Children's Hospital of Atlanta. The ballroom was sparkling, filled with important people in expensive clothes. I was there representing my cybersecurity firm, which had just donated a new security system to the hospital. And he was there, Logan, handsome and slightly out of place in his tuxedo. He wasn't mingling with the donors. He was in a quiet corner talking to a little girl in a wheelchair, making her laugh so hard she snorted. He had a special light about him, a genuine kindness that seemed rare and real. He told me he was a pediatric anesthesiologist. He put children to sleep before surgery. He held their hand and was the first face they saw when they woke up. How could you not fall for a man like that? Our connection was immediate, intense. We talked for hours that night about everything and nothing. 1 year later, we were married in a small, gorgeous ceremony in my parents' backyard, under the old, sprawling oak tree I used to climb as a child. Those first years were wonderful, the kind of years you see in movies and think that can't be real. We bought a Craftsman fixer-upper in the North Atlanta suburbs and spent every weekend covered in paint and sawdust, renovating it together. We'd argue over paint colors and laugh until our sides hurt. He kept a demanding doctor's schedule. The long hours were part of the deal, but he always made time for us. I remember once having a terrible week at work. A major case wasn't moving forward, and I felt completely defeated. I came home late one Friday, exhausted and ready to collapse. The house was dark, and for a second my heart sank, thinking he wasn't home. But then I saw it, a trail of tea lights leading from the front door through the living room and out onto the deck. He had set up a blanket, pillows, and a telescope. He'd packed a picnic basket with my favorite Napa Valley Cabernet and some artisanal Gouda. We spent the whole night under the stars, and he just held me and listened. He didn't try to fix my problems. He just shared their weight. He'd leave notes on my laptop cover. Have a great day. I love you. He made spectacular Sunday breakfasts, and his terrible singing would echo through the house as he flipped pancakes. Never in my life had I felt safer, more cherished, or more deeply loved. That was the man I married. That was the life he and I built. And that was the memory I clung to. The foundation I believed was rock solid, but was actually built on sand. The first crack in that foundation appeared 3 years ago. It didn't look like a crack at the time. It looked like family. My sister Ava had always been the restless one. While I was busy building a career and a stable life, she was drifting. She dropped out of college twice. She moved from city to city, New York, Miami, Chicago, and changed career paths with dizzying frequency. She was always searching for something but never seemed to find it. So when she called me crying from a bus station in Chicago after another failed attempt to find herself, my heart broke. She was broke, alone, and defeated. Just come home, I told her. Come to Atlanta. You can stay with us until you get back on your feet. I remember mentioning it to Logan that night. He hesitated, and I should have paid more attention to that. He was sitting on the kitchen island, flipping through medical journals. Are you sure, Riley? He asked without looking up. Having someone else in the house, even your sister, might change our dynamic. She's my sister, Lo, I retorted a little defensively. She has nowhere else to go. Family helps family. It'll only be a couple of months. He finally looked up, giving me that warm smile that always melted my resolve. Okay, he said. Of course, whatever you think is best. What was supposed to be a 2-month stay stretched into 6. Ava quickly found a job at a local art gallery, but claimed she just couldn't afford the sky-high rents of Atlanta on her meager salary. I'm saving up, Riles, I promise, she'd say. Just a little longer. And honestly, at first I didn't mind. I'd always wanted to be closer to my sister. With our busy lives, we'd grown distant. Her presence seemed to fill a space in our home I hadn't even realized was empty. Her bubbly, chaotic energy contrasted with my quiet, methodical nature. It felt lively. For a while, it felt like we were a real, bustling family. I was so happy to have my sister back. How naive. I had welcomed the snake into my own home. Looking back is a special kind of torture, isn't it? You see everything so clearly. All the little signs, the red flags you dismissed as nothing, suddenly line up like soldiers in a row, pointing straight to the ugly truth. After Ava moved in, things started to shift. But it was so slow, so insidious that I didn't notice. Logan started taking longer shifts. An emergency surgery, a complicated case, a last-minute consult. I was married to a doctor. The long hours were part of the deal. I never doubted it. I just left a plate of dinner for him in the oven and went to bed. Ava started running errands that dragged hours longer than they should have. A trip to the grocery store would turn into a 3-hour ordeal. "Oh, I just ran into an old friend," she'd say cheerily, cheeks rosy. They developed inside jokes, little phrases and knowing glances across the table that excluded me. Sometimes I'd walk into the living room and find them talking, only for them to went silent the moment they saw me. The air felt thick, charged, as if I'd interrupted something personal. When I asked what they were talking about, the answer was always the same and vague, nothing important. I remember a family barbecue in our backyard. My mother pulled me aside in the kitchen while I was getting more potato salad. She was looking out the window, scowling. "You know," she said in a very hushed voice. Logan and Ava seemed to get along really well. I looked outside. Logan was helping Ava set up the badminton net. He was laughing, his hand resting on her arm as he showed her how to hold the racket. "Why wouldn't they?" I replied, genuinely confused. "It's nice, right?" "Of course it's nice." My mother shrugged. "Some men just don't get along with their in-laws. You're lucky." Lucky? I thought I was lucky. My husband and my sister had become friends. Our home felt more alive. Even my best friend Maya saw it. We were having lunch one day and my phone rang. It was Ava calling Logan's mobile phone, which he had accidentally left in my car. It was the third time she'd called him that morning for some trivial reason. Maya watched me answer with a skeptical stare. After he hung up, she stirred her iced tea and said, "Riley, be careful." "Careful of what?" I laughed. "I wouldn't let my sister get that cozy with my husband," she said deadpan. I was almost insulted. "Maya, it's not like that. Ava's just dependent. She looks up to him. Besides, it's Logan." The implication was clear. Logan would never betray me. He was too honest, too devoted, too good. I told myself not to be the jealous, suspicious wife. If he and Ava went silent when I entered a room, it was a coincidence. If he quickly stashed his phone when a message came in, it was just work stuff he didn't want to bore me with. Trust, after all, was the bedrock of our marriage. I clung to that trust like a life raft, completely unaware that I was already drowning. The discovery was accidental. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a gut instinct. It was ordinary. It was a Tuesday night, 6 months before that fateful family dinner. Logan was on call at the hospital, and I was working from home trying to finish a report. I decided to order takeout, but my phone was dead. I grabbed Logan's laptop from his home office on impulse. I opened the browser. It was set to automatically restore his previous session, and there it was, his personal email account open on the display. I wasn't hunting for anything. I had no suspicion driving me to snoop. My finger was already hovering over the touchpad to close the window, but the subject line of one email caught my eye. It was from Ava. The subject was simply, "Last night." My blood ran ice cold. Against every sensible thought in my head, I clicked and my world, the solid, steady world I had so carefully built, shattered. The email was explicit, unmistakable. Last night was incredible. Ava had written, "I can't stop thinking about you. I can still feel your hands on me." I felt the air rush out of my lungs. My vision tunneled. I scrolled down. There was his reply sent from his mobile phone that same day. "We have to be more careful," Logan had written. "I don't want to hurt Riley. But I can't stop thinking about you either." I kept scrolling. I read the entire thread with a strange, numb detachment, as if I were examining evidence for a job case, instead of witnessing the collapse of my own life. The emails went back over 2 years, 2 years before she even moved in with us. While she was in Chicago, they were already planning, texting, fantasizing. Her move to Atlanta, her stay at our house, wasn't because she needed help. It was a strategic move. 2 years of deceit, 2 years of secret meetups, coded language, lies. So many lies. They had been doing it right under my nose, in my house, maybe in my bed. I closed the laptop without ordering dinner. I sat there in the dark in his leather desk chair for what felt like hours. The silence in the house was deafening. Every happy memory I had from the last 2 years was now tainted, poisoned. Every late night at the hospital, every errand Ava ran, every knowing glance I had ignored, it all snapped into place with horrifying clarity. When Logan came home that night, I searched his face for any sign of the imposter I had just discovered. Any indication that the man who kissed my forehead and asked about my day was the same one who had written those messages to my sister. But he looked exactly the same. He smiled his usual warm smile. His eyes held the same soft gaze. "You okay?" he asked, noticing my silence. "Rough day at work?" "Just tired," I replied, my voice sounding flat and far, even to my own ears. He nodded, totally oblivious. And as I watched him move through our house, through our life so comfortably, so easily while keeping this awful secret, I realized the man I married didn't exist. He was Amiraj. And I knew in that moment that discovery wasn't enough. I wouldn't just confront them. That was their game, their narrative. No, I would do what I do best. I would record everything. For the next few weeks, I lived in a kind of fog. I swung between a brutal, devastating pain and a strange, icy numbness. I would wake up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing. The words from their emails burned into my mind. How could I have been so clueless? During the day, I was a zombie operating on autopilot. I went to work, made dinner, held conversations that felt canned and empty. I was living with a perfect stranger, and I had to pretend everything was normal. A part of me, a small, aching part, still hoped there was some explanation. Maybe it was just a fantasy. Maybe they never acted on it. But my professional habits, the ones that made me so good at my job, are hard to kill. Almost subconsciously at first, I started building a case. It began small. I was paying our bills digitally and spotted a charge on our joint credit card from a boutique hotel downtown, the kind of place people go for romantic weekends. The charge was for a Wednesday afternoon when Logan had told me he'd be in back-to-back surgeries all day. I kept a screenshot of the receipt. That was Exhibit A. My investigation became more methodical. I enabled location sharing on his phone, something we'd done years ago for safety, then ignored about. When he claimed to be working late, a quick check showed his location dot at a restaurant in another neighborhood. Or worse, at an address I quickly discovered was Ava's new apartment. She had finally moved out a few months earlier, a move I now understood was just to facilitate their affair. I noted every lie. I cross-referenced his work schedule with credit card statements. I noted random run-ins between him and Ava that seemed too frequent to be coincidence. The evidence piled up, damning and bleak. Not only were they having an affair, but they were shockingly sloppy about it, as if they didn't expect me to notice or perhaps didn't care if I did. The lowest point came about 2 months after finding the emails. Logan told me he was going to a weekend medical conference in Charleston, South Carolina. I felt that familiar hard knot in my stomach. A quick search found no such conference. On Saturday morning, I found myself sitting in my car across the street from a luxury hotel downtown, the same one from the credit card receipt. I only had to wait 20 minutes. I watched them pull up in his car. They were laughing. Hay got out, came around, and opened her door. He put his hand on the small of her back as they walked in, an intimate move I knew so well. It was like watching a scene from a movie about someone else's life. I raised my phone, hand steady as a rock, and took the pictures. Click, click, click. I documented everything, adding them to my growing digital file, a secret folder on my home computer called Case 734. That night, Logan came home late, full of elaborate stories about the conference, the boring-as-heck keynote speakers, the awful hotel food. I just nodded, served him the still reheated dinner I'd prepared, and listened to his BS. "You look exhausted," I said, my eyes drawn to the faint smudge of lipstick on his collar. It was her shade. I knew it instantly. It was brutal, he agreed, taking my hand across the table. "But I'm home now." The tenderness of the gesture, the casual lie, the sheer bold-faced audacity of it all nearly broke me. I gently pulled my hand away. "You should crash," I said. That night, as he slept soundly beside him, snoring softly, a monster in my bed, I made my decision. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of my tears or my rage. Not yet. I would continue gathering proof. I would build my case until it was airtight, bulletproof, and undeniable. And when the time came, their veal wouldn't be a private, messy confrontation they could lie their way out of. It would be public. It would be irrefutable, and it would be completely and absolutely on my terms. After 3 months of living a two-timing life, I decided to test the waters. I needed to see how he would react, how deep the deception really went. I approached him by the book, as I would a hostile witness in an investigation. I chose armament when he was vulnerable, tired after a long shift, slightly relaxed from a glass of wine. We were sitting on the porch swing one night, the air cool and breezy. It was a scene pulled straight from our happy years. For a moment, it almost felt real. "I think we should talk about Ava," I said casually, my voice even. I felt his body tense beside me, an infinite decimal shift. But I felt it. "What about her?" Hesked, his tone wary. "I've noticed you two seem very close lately," I said, watching his face in the dim porch light. He chuckled, but the sound was kind of forced, fragile. "She's your sister, Riley. Of course we're close. She's family." "No, I mean really close, Logan," I said, turning to look him straight in the eye. I held his gaze, pouring every ounce of my silent knowledge into that look. "Is there something you want to tell me?" For one fleeting second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, a flash of panic, of recognition, perhaps even guilt. I thought for one hopeful, foolish moment that he might confess that the good man I married was still in there somewhere, buried under all the lies. Then, just as quickly, the mask snapped back into place. His expression hardened, his eyes turned cold. "I don't know what you're implying, Riley, but I don't appreciate it," he said frostily, his voice dripping with condescension. "Ava is going through a lot. Sometimes she leans on me for advice. As a friend, as a brother-in-law. If you're feeling insecure about something, that's on you. Maybe you should think about why you're suddenly so distrustful." Gaslighting. It was a classic maneuver, perfectly executed. The quick denial, the flipping of the narrative, the redirection of blame, painting me as their rational, jealous wife. It was so smooth, so rehearsed. It almost made me doubt myself. Almost. But I had the receipts. I had the photos. I had the truth locked away in case 734. I simply looked at him and nodded slowly. "You're right," I said quietly. "Maybe it's just me." He relaxed instantly, believing he had won. He put his arm around me and pulled me close. "Hey," he said softly. "We're good, you and me. Don't you ever doubt that?" I let him hold me, my body rigid and cold. I felt nothing but a deep, bone-cold emptiness. My husband wasn't just a cheater. He was a manipulator, and this was no longer just about an affair. It was a war of realities, and I was the only one who knew it had already begun. My failed attempt at a soft confrontation seemed to alert them. It was as if I had poked the hornet's nest, and now they were launching their own counteroffensive. A campaign of manipulation so astonishingly cruel, it was almost impressive. Ava started calling Memory frequently. "Hey, little sis, let's get our nails done this weekend. Oh, there's a new exhibit at the gallery. We should go together." Her voice dripped with an artificial, syrupy enthusiasm that made my skin crawl. She was trying to build a new narrative, one where we were the closest of sisters to make my suspicions seem even more far-fetched. The worst was when she tried to set me up. We were at a gallery event and she pulled me over to meet one of the artists, a single man. "Riley works too hard," she said with a compassionate pout. "Logan and I think she needs to get out more, have more fun." The cruelty of it, trying to pair me off with other men while she was sleeping with my husband, was staggering. She wasn't just cheating, she was mocking me. Meanwhile, Logan doubled down on his own deceptions. They started using my own mother as a pawn in their game. I'll never forget the day my mother called, her voice full of excitement. "Okay, honey, I have to tell you something, but you have to pretend to be surprised," she said. "What is it, Mom?" Eased, my stomach sinking. "Well, Ava was just here, and she let it slip that she and Logan have been planning a big surprise for your anniversary. You know, a trip or something." My blood ran cold. "Our anniversary was 4 months away." "She's been so secretive about it," my mother continued, completely oblivious. "But she mentioned they've been working on it for months, meeting up to plan all the details. Isn't that the sweetest thing that your sister and husband are close enough to do that for you?" Months working on it. Meetings involving my own mother in their fiction. They weren't just having an affair anymore. They were systematically rewriting our family's reality, manipulating everyone around us, isolating me in a web of their lies. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a conspiracy. That call crystallized something inside me. The last remnants of my hurt and sadness burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard, laser-clear rage. My goal was no longer just to expose them. My goal was to dismantle their entire reality piece by piece in front of everyone they had lied to. They wanted to control the narrative. Fine. I was about to give them a narrative they would never forget. I decided to force the issue. I was done with subtle hints and silent observation. I needed to see how far he would go. One afternoon, before Logan got home, I deliberately left a trail of breadcrumbs on the kitchen counter. Breadcrumbs of his own betrayal, a printout of the hotel receipt, a few screenshots of their less explicit, but still incriminating messages. I placed them right next to his mail where he couldn't miss them. Then I waited in the living room, heart pounding, ready for the inevitable explosive confrontation that would finally bring everything into the open. Hours passed. I heard him come in, the jingle of his keys, the rustle of him checking the mail. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Finally, he walked into the living room. His expression wasn't angry or guilty. It was grave, solemn. He looked like a man carrying a heavy burden. "We need to talk," he said, sitting on the armchair across from me. "Yes, we do," I agreed. A strange sense of relief washed over me. The charade was finally over. "I found something troubling," he continued, his voice tight with what sounded like pain. He placed a folder on the coffee table between us. I picked it up, expecting to see the evidence I had left. Instead, I pulled out a stack of printed emails. Emails between my work colleague, Marcus, and me. They were innocent messages about project deadlines and technical issues, but they had been altered. He had selectively copied and pasted phrases, removed context, and reassembled them to look like flirty, romantic, incriminating exchanges. He had manufactured proof of an affair to accuse me. "I know about you and Marcus," Logan said, his voice heavy with fabricated sorrow. "How long has this been going on, Riley? All those late nights at the office. It all makes sense now." The timing was so surreal, so utterly twisted that I almost laughed. It wasn't just deflection. It was a preemptive strike. He was setting up his justification. He was creating a narrative where my supposed infidelity had tragically pushed him into my sister's arms. He was making himself the victim. "There is nothing with Marcus," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Those messages are about work, and you know it." "They look pretty personal to me," he countered, shaking his head sadly. "I just can't believe you'd do this to us." The calculated nature of it chilled me to the bone. In that moment, I understood direct confrontation would never work. He and Ava had invested too much in their lies. They would deny, deflect, and distort the truth until their fiction became the accepted reality. They would burn me to the ground to save themselves. "I think," he said, taking my hand with rehearsed concern, That we should take some time apart. This isn't healthy for either of us. Relief washed his face when I didn't pull away. I played my part. I let him hold my hand. Time apart might be good, I whispered. He squeezed my hand, a look of deep sympathy on his face. It's not about blaming anyone, the master manipulator said without blinking. Sometimes people just drift apart. He paused, then delivered the final, perfectly planned line. Ava offered me her guest room for a while we figure things out. Of course she had. Their whole plan slotted together perfectly. He thought my quiet acquiescence meant surrender. He thought he had won. He was terribly wrong. As he gloated in his own cunning, I was mentally moving on to a new phase of my investigation. The game had changed, and they had no idea of the hell I was about to unleash. The day Logan moved his things out was one of the strangest of my life. He packed a couple of suitcases, whistling some cheerful, oblivious tune, acting as if it were a perfectly normal, amicable separation. Ava came over to help, throwing me looks of pity and compassion that made me want to scream. They were so confident in their little drama, so sure of their script. "Take all the time you need, little sis," she said, giving me a tight, fake hug. The moment their car pulled away, I took a day off work. While they thought I was home, wallowing in my grief, I was driving downtown. My destination was the office of a man named Ray Jenkins, a private investigator a colleague had once recommended. He was a blunt, rugged ex-cop who specialized in infidelity cases and had testified in hundreds of divorce proceedings. I sat across from him at this messy desk and presented my files. No suspicion, no theories, a completed dossier. He looked through my documentation, the timelines, the financial records, the location data, the photos, with a low whistle of surprise and respect. "Ma'am," he said, looking over his reading glasses, "most clients come to me with a hunch and a handful of blurry photos. You've brought me a complete indictment." "It's what I do," I replied. "Just usually not in my personal life. I'm not looking to hire you for surveillance. I need a professional assessment. What do I have and what else do I need?" He confirmed what I already suspected. My evidence was compelling, but a clever lawyer could potentially explain away each individual piece. The hotel stay, a business trip, the nights near her apartment. He was just helping her fix a leaky faucet. "Intent," Jenkins said, tapping the folder with a thick finger. "Intent is what you need. If you can prove they deliberately planned to deceive you and others, your position strengthens considerably. It's not just the affair, it's the conspiracy." I left his office with a renewed sense of purpose. My next stop was Atlanta's most respected divorce attorney, a sharp, elegant woman named Celeste Dubois. She reviewed my evidence with cold, clinical precision. "This is exceptional documentation, Riley," she said, her voice quiet and reassuring. "Most clients bring metashoes and accusations. You've brought receipts, literally and figuratively. What can I expect?" I asked. "A favorable settlement, no doubt," she explained. "But you must understand that Georgia operates under a no-fault divorce system. The court won't punish them for the affair itself, legally. Their cheating has limited impact on asset division unless you can prove financial fraud." "I'm not looking for legal punishment," I clarified, my voice hard as steel. "I'm not looking for more money. I want the truth to be acknowledged. I want their narrative dismantled. I want everyone to see them for who they really are." Celeste Dubois studied me thoughtfully for a long moment. Then she offered a small, knowing smile. "Well," she said, leaning back in her chair, "the court of public opinion can often be far more punishing than any judicial sentence." Her words were a thunderclap. A public fiction deserved a public truth, and I knew with absolute certainty how and when I was going to deliver it. Armed with professional advice, I broadened my investigation. It was no longer just about documenting the affair. It was about exposing the intent, the conspiracy. And what I found was far worse than I could have ever imagined. The first major breakthrough came from our joint savings account. I noticed a series of regular identical withdrawals made over the last year. They were disguised as cash withdrawals for household expenses. But when I dug deeper, I discovered they corresponded with deposits of the exact same amounts into a private account Logan had opened without my knowledge. He had been systematically draining our future to finance his new life. It was financial infidelity on top of everything else. It wasn't just a betrayal of my heart. It was a betrayal of our shared life, our partnership, the dream of retirement, travel, security. He was stealing it from me, but the most jaw-dropping, gut-wrenching discovery came from his cloud storage. Like a lot of people, his phone automatically backed up everything. Photos, notes, and text messages. He'd never been very tech-savvy and had completely forgotten about it. One night, armed with a password I'd known for years, I logged in and found their private conversations. Reading their messages was like pouring acid into my soul. They talked about me in cruel, dismissive terms. They mocked my trust, my work, my personality. They laughed about how oblivious I was to everything. I'll never forget one exchange. It was branded on my brain. Logan had written, "She's so buried in her work, she hasn't noticed a thing." We could probably do it on the kitchen counter while she's typing in the office, and she wouldn't even hear us. Ava's reply came 1 minute later. LOL. She'll probably thank us for making the decision for her. She never knew how to be a real wife anyway. Always so serious. She never knew how to be a real wife. The words echoed in the silent room. All the years I'd supported his demanding career, managed our home, celebrated his every promotion, nursed him when he was sick, it all boiled down to that. A joke, a failure. Reading their cruelty transformed something inside me. The numbness that had protected me for months shattered, and in its place came a cold, clarifying rage. This wasn't just betrayal. It was systematic emotional abuse. It was a coordinated effort to undermine my reality, to paint me as a fool, to preserve their own selfish image as two people who simply fell in love. I meticulously saved every message, every financial transaction, every lie. My dossier was no longer just about an affair. It was about a calculated, malicious campaign of deception and cruelty. Divorce was inevitable, but it would happen on my terms, and the court of public opinion was about to be convened. Just as I was finishing compiling my evidence, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. My heart hammered against my ribs. Family dinner at the house. This Sunday is your dad's 65th birthday. Logan and Ava confirmed. Please come, honey. Don't make it awkward for your father. Don't make it awkward. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. But as I read the message, a slow smile spread across my face. They had no idea. They had just handed me the perfect stage, the perfect audience. All the actors would be assembled in one room, expecting me to be the sad, pitiful wife, the awkward third wheel in their blossoming love story. They expected me to follow their script. I spent the next 3 days in a state of intense, focused preparation. I was no longer a wife or a sister. I was a prosecutor preparing for the most important trial of my life. I didn't just dump all the evidence into one massive file. That would be messy, overwhelming. I personalized my presentation. I created curated separate emails for each key family member. For me, father, a practical, no-nonsense man, I compiled the financial evidence. I included the statements from our joint savings account alongside the statements from Logan's secret account, highlighting the dates he had borrowed money from my dad for a smart investment, while simultaneously diverting our funds. For my mother, a woman who valued family loyalty above all else, I focused on Ava's deception. I included screenshots of messages where Ava used helping mom with errands as a cover story to meet Logan. I included the conversation about the anniversary surprise, showing how they had used my mother's love and trust as a tool in their lies. For my aunts, uncles, and cousin Germaine, I documented the specific lies told to each of them, showing a pattern of manipulation that affected the entire family. The final touch was a master email, a completed dossier sent only to myself. It contained everything, the full timeline, every piece of financial and digital evidence, and a detailed, dispassionate account of my discovery process. This would be my reference, my script during the inevitable chaos that would follow my reveal. Sunday morning, I woke up with a strange, deep sense of serenity. There was no anxiety or fear, just purpose. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple blue dress that Logan had always claimed to love. I styled my hair, applied light makeup, and put on the pearl earrings my grandmother had left me. A small piece of her strength, a little piece of my own family heritage. As I was about to leave, my phone chimed with a text from Ava, just confirming you're coming tonight. Dad would be heartbroken if you didn't show. We're family, after all. Let's not make it weird. The casual, stunning audacity of it nearly broke my composure. I took a deep breath, my hand resting on the doorknob. In a few hours, their carefully constructed fiction would crumble under the weight of irrefutable documented truth. I replied with a single word, coming. I arrived at my parents' house right on time, carrying a homemade carrot cake, my father's favorite, and a carefully wrapped gift. As I stepped inside, the familiar sounds and smells of the family gathering washed over me. For a moment, it was just like any other Sunday. But Ick knew it wasn't. It was the end of an era. Logan and Ava were already there, sitting side by side on the living room sofa. It was the first time they were so openly a couple in a family setting. They were testing the waters, gauging the reaction. They looked up as I entered, their faces a mix of pity and apprehension. My mother greeted me with a tight, worried hug. "Oh, Riley, I'm so glad you came," she whispered. "This means so much to your father." Dinner proceeded with a painfully unbearable normalcy. We ate my mother's roast. We discussed safe topics, the weather, my cousin's new baby, my father's retirement plans. I participated mechanically, a ghost at the feast, watching Logan and Ava exchange small secret smiles across the table. They were just waiting for their moment. The moment they had planned and rehearsed. As my mother started serving dessert, it came. Logan cleared his throat and tapped his spoon against his wine glass. The room went silent. It was the same gesture he had used for every important announcement in our life together. Our engagement, our first house, his latest promotion. Moments that once filled me with pride now felt like steps in a long, elaborate lie. He began his speech, the one I knew was coming. Words about difficult decisions, about unexpected love, about not being able to control who your heart chooses. As he spoke, I felt a buzz from my phone in my purse. I glanced down discreetly. It was an alert for my email scheduling system. Delivery failure. Server error. A jolt of pure panic shot through me. I quickly checked the status. The carefully timed emails, the foundation of my entire plan, had failed to send. A temporary server outage, estimated recovery time, unknown. My blood ran cold. My entire plan hinged on those emails. Without them, I was exactly what they expected me to be. The shocked, tear-streaked wife with no proof, no power, just a wild story they could easily dismiss. Logan was reaching the climax of his speech. His hand now openly held Ava's across the table. My family watched them, their expressions ranging from shock to discomfort and pity. Pity for me? I had seconds to decide. Walk away defeated or confront him with nothing but my word against theirs. Neither was an option. And then I remembered Plan B. I had brought my laptop in my purse just in case. All the evidence, the full dossier was organized and ready. As Logan uttered the final words, "Ava and I have fallen in love," and all eyes in the room turned to me expecting my breakdown. I was already moving. Calmly, purposefully, I reached into my purse. I flipped open the laptop beneath the table. I navigated to my email program. I attached the master file with every single piece of evidence, and I added every family member's address to the recipient line. As the stunned silence in the room stretched out, I pressed send. Then I looked up, met my husband's confident gaze, and spoke into the quiet. "Please, everyone," I said, my voice clear as a bell, surprising even me. "Check your email right now." The choreography of the next few moments was almost cinematic. A succession of chimes and buzzes rang out around the table as my email landed. Confused looks were exchanged. My cousin Jermaine was the first to open it. His eyes went wide as he scrolled. "I've provided some additional context for Logan's announcement," I explained calmly as Logan's smile finally vanished, replaced by a look of mounting horror. "Just some documentation I thought you should all have." My father was next. His face darkened like a storm cloud as he scrolled on his phone. "Well, damn," Jermaine whispered. My mother put her phone down, her hands shaking. Her eyes darted from Ava to me, disbelief and horror warring on her face. What is this?" "What did you do?" Ava hissed, her face draining of color. Logan fumbled for his own phone. "It's the truth," I replied simply. "Everything. The complete history of your relationship with my sister, all organized for clarity. Hotel receipts, text messages, financial records, it's all there." The room had fallen into a new kind of silence. Not the silence of shock, but the heavy, resonant silence of revelation. It was only broken by the occasional gasp or whispered curse as someone reached another damning piece of evidence. "These are private conversations," Logan finally sputtered, scrolling frantically through the texts, his planned narrative of star-crossed lovers disintegrating with every swipe. "You had no right. This is an invasion of privacy." "Actually, I did," I cut in. My voice went cool and clinical, as if I were testifying in court. The shared financial accounts were just that, shared. And most of this information was gathered from devices and accounts you often left open and logged into in our shared home. It's called digital forensics, Logan. It's literally my profession. I directed my gaze to the room. "You plan to announce this tonight," I said, my voice firm and strong. "You choreographed this moment to control the narrative. The reluctant lovers, the difficult decision, the clean break. You just didn't expect me to have a narrative of my own." My mother was the first to find her voice. She turned to my sister, her face pale, her voice trembling with a fury I'd never heard from her before. "Ava, how could you do this to your own sister?" Ava crumbled, resorting to tears, her go-to strategy her whole life. "I never meant to hurt anyone. It just happened. You can't control who you fall in love with. According to your messages, you've been planning this for over 2 years, Cousin Germain interjected, holding up his phone, his face a mask of disgust. "That's not just happening. That's Ashim." The chorus of condemnation grew. Aunt Valerie was comforting my mother, who was now looking at Ava as if she were a stranger. Uncle Walter, a retired accountant, was grilling a stunned Logan about the financial discrepancies. The secret bank account. Logan made one last desperate attempt at damage control, trying to put on his medical authority shell. "This is clearly Riley's way of processing a difficult transition," he said, adopting a clinical, condescending tone. "She's created this elaborate—" "Shut up, Logan." My father's voice sliced through the air like a razor. It was icy. He stood up, his presence filling the room. "My daughter doesn't fabricate evidence." The battle was over. The truth had won. After months of documentation, analysis, and preparation, there was nothing else I needed to say. The evidence spoke for itself. I picked up my purse and coat and stood. "I should go," I said quietly into the tense silence. "Dad, I am so sorry about your birthday dinner." My father was by my side in an instant. "I'll walk you out," he said. His arm wrapped firmly around my shoulders. Outside in the cool night air, he hugged me tightly. "I had no idea what you were going through," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "I needed to understand it all first," I explained, leaning into his hug. "And I needed everyone else to understand it too. Not just take my word against theirs. I needed them to see the truth." As I got into my car and drove away, my phone, which I had silenced, lit up with a relentless stream of family messages, messages of support, of shock, of solidarity. I turned off the phone, grateful for the silence. For the first time in 6 months, I felt a deep sense of peace. The war was over. You know, as I drove away from that house, from the wreckage of my old life, I felt an incredible sense of release. It was the first time I could breathe freely in a long time. And I know some of you listening know exactly what that feeling is like. If you are still here listening to my story, it means so much to me. It makes me feel a little less alone in all of this. If you could, please help me out by giving this video a like and just commenting with the number 1 down below. It lets me know you liked it, and it tells me you're here with me on this journey. Your support is a bigger boost than you could ever imagine. So please just comment with the number 1 and let me tell you how this story ends. The next morning, I filed for divorce. The legal process was surprisingly swift. With the mountain of evidence I had, there was no fight. Logan and Ava's attempts to control the narrative had completely collapsed. Not in a messy battle of he said, she said, but through the quiet, methodical presentation of the truth. They were ostracized by the family. My heartbroken mother told Avash needed a long time before she could even look at her again. My father refused to speak to Logan. Their great love story had become a cautionary tale about deceit. 3 months later, sitting in my attorney Celeste Dubois' office, signing the final divorce papers, she asked if I felt satisfied with the outcome. "I don't feel satisfaction," I replied honestly, looking at my signature on the page that officially ended my marriage. "I just feel clarity." I had built a career on uncovering the digital evidence of human behavior. I never imagined my most important case would be documenting the unraveling of my own life. But in the end, the tools of my trade were the tools of my salvation. Methodical documentation had achieved what emotional confrontation never could. Ithad replaced deception with an irrefutable truth. That afternoon, I packed the last of my belongings from the house we'd built together. The Craftsman home, once my dream house, now felt like a mausoleum of dead memories. I didn't feel sad. I simply felt finished. I moved into a new apartment, a small, bright space with unobstructed views of the Atlanta skyline. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over my empty living room, I sat on the floor with my laptop. I opened case 734 one last time. I looked at the folders filled with pain and betrayal, and I dragged the entire file to the trash. Then I emptied the trash. It was the final step in a process that had consumed nearly a year of my life. Tomorrow would be the first page of a new chapter, one written entirely by my own hand on my own terms. And as I watched the city lights turn on, I knew with a certainty that filled my whole being that I was going to be all right. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my entire story. It wasn't easy to tell, but sharing helps. If you've gone through anything similar, or if any part of this resonated with you, please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. You are not alone. And remember, no matter how dark things get, you always have the strength to find your own truth.